Part 3. That was a spectacular battle, Ains said in praise to Cocytus, who was kneeling before him. Thank you. However, I trust you understand that while we used the stick this time, you must employ the carrot in the future. You are not to rule them through fear. Understand? After Ains nodded, he looked to the other guardians in the room. Very good. Now then, listen well, you guardians. Like I said earlier in the throne room, Cocytus will administer the Lizardmen village. If he needs help, I hope you will give it to him. Cocytus, I hope you will foster a deeply rooted loyalty to Nazarick and the Lizardmen. I also hope that you will cultivate the growth of talented members of their species. I will leave these tasks to you. If you need wings of ascension or other special items, let me know. I will also lend you a powered suit, for the time being. Players could change their character races in Yggdrasil, but that did not imply that one could freely change race. Some requirements had to be met for the change, and the changes were irreversible. Part of the requirements were items. Someone who wanted to become an Elder Lich would need a Book of the Dead. Someone who wanted to become an imp would need a Fallen Seed. The Angel Wing, item which Ains had mentioned, was used for becoming an angel. Ains had mentioned it because he thought that it might be possible to change races in that manner. Shall count on you when the time comes. Ains-sama, May. WuxaWorldAudio.com. Know how you wish to deal with those Lizardmen? Those Lizardmen? Yes, the ones called Zarusu and Shazryu, the two who fought to the end. Their corpses should still be in the marsh. However, why did he bring them up? Recover their corpses and use them for raw materials when I'm not making undead with my skills. That would be bit of waste. Oh, why is that? Are they that valuable? Ains had watched the battle through the mirror of remote viewing and saw an overwhelming victory. Nothing about them recommended themselves to his eye. They might be weak, however, saw their fearless warrior spirit, turning them into raw materials is bit of waste. Feel that they could become stronger, perhaps even exceeding our expectations. Ains-sama, believe you have not yet conducted any practical experiments with resurrecting the dead. Could you not do so with them? Does he like those Lizardmen? In all honesty, Ains did not feel anything when he heard things like warrior spirit. Quote, he had heard of terms like killing intent in manga and light novels, but he thought nothing of them. It was kind of like how Narborough responded with, "Ah, so that's what it is, oh," and so on while he was lecturing her. Similarly, Ains had no idea what this warrior's empathy business was about. That was because Ains had originally been a normal salaryman, despite his current state. An average citizen who actually knew about a warrior's spirit or killing intent would probably be considered dangerous. Now, he could understand something like a bureaucrat's spirit instead. I see. So it would be a shame, then? However, when Ains heard about Cocytus's approval of the Lizardmen, his true thoughts were, well, you might call it a shame, but I have no idea what that means. Still, when he thought about it, Cocytus's words made a lot of sense. He had wanted to find a place to experiment with resurrection anyway, and Ains felt that using them for those experiments would be very beneficial. In addition, unlike how Cocytus had been waffling around in the throne room, he had now proposed a useful solution for them. If that was a sign of improvement, then he had passed with flying colors. He paused briefly to think, and then Ains thought of his other exceptional subordinates. He thought of them as they stood around him, in a suitably subservient posture, silent and unmoving. Albedo, what is your opinion? It would be the same as yours, Ains-sama. What do you think, Demiurge? I feel whatever you decide would be best, Ains-sama. How about you, Sheltier? Like Demiurge, I shall abide by your ruling, Ains-sama. Aura. Yeah, I'm with everyone else. Mare. Yes, I think so too. They might as well not have answered at all. Ains's head ached. Ains thought hard, and finally realized something. Perhaps the Guardians did not think it was a big deal. In other words, no matter how he decided, they did not feel there would be any major benefits or drawbacks. Of course, he had to consider their respective situations. Sometimes, problems might arise due to their varying circumstances. Simply put, when a rich person said, "Oh, that sum's not a problem," and would immediately doubt the truth of those words. In other words, it was the result of differing values and priorities. I wasted my time asking. Still, that means resurrecting the lizard men should be fine, right? I was planning to think carefully on this because I've made too many mistakes recently. With no recourse, Ains had to ponder the merits and demerits of the situation by himself. We have decided to subordinate the Lizard Men village to our rule, but is there a suitable candidate for leader? Do they have a group that manages the entire village? No, but there is a person who is suitable to be the village's representative. Oh, who is that? It is the White Lizard Man, who did not take part in the fighting. She appears to have druidic powers. Her, then. Well, that is workable. She should be worth using, Ains thought. We could also use her to keep an eye on the others. However, having her execute Ains's plan might undermine Kokaitis's plan to administer the village. That being the case, what should he do? At this point, a flash of inspiration struck Ains. Wouldn't it be faster to ask her directly? Granted, I didn't get any usable answers just now. Ains shared his plans with Kokaitis, who replied in the affirmative. Given Kokaitis's reaction, the fact that he might be caving in to his master's wishes could not be ruled out. However, after glancing at Demiurge and Albedo, he noted that neither of them seemed to be acting out of the ordinary, which reassured Ains that he was doing the right thing. Very well. How soon before she can be brought here? Forgive me if have overstepped myself, but sensed that you might wish to see her, and so ordered her to wait in nearby room. Ains glanced at Demiurge, who shook his head. Nicely done indeed. He settled the matter without anyone's instructions, and it doesn't look like someone else gave him the idea. Ains wondered if this was how a superior felt when he saw his subordinate grow as a person. He was all smiles, although one could not tell his expression given that he was a skeleton. No, you've done well, Kokaitis. Wasting time is foolish, and your judgment was correct. All right, bring her in, then. Please wait. What's the matter, Aura? While they are not strangers, meeting them in an unremarkable place like this will damage your reputation, Ains-sama. I feel you should receive her in Nazarik's throne room. The other guardians nodded, with the exception of Mare. My apologies. Had not considered that. Please forgive me. I hadn't thought of that at all. With that in mind, Ains wondered how he should resolve this problem. At that moment, he remembered the words from back then. In that case, Aura. Yes. Did you not once say that you built this place in imitation of Nazarik? You were right. Kokaitis, bring her over. I shall meet her here. Ains-sama. Aura, that's enough. Albedo. Not knowing why she had been told to stand down, Aura looked at Albedo, her face red with protest. However, Albedo merely glanced at her and then paid her no heed, looking at the main door instead. It was Demiurge who answered the angry Aura. Ains-sama would not make a mistake. That being the case, if Ains-sama says this place is as good as Nazarik, then it can't be wrong. Sheltier continued. Well, I don't think I'm totally correct, and I hope they don't think that way. Still, it ended up helping me out here. Aura, I shall say it again. I feel that this place built by you, one of my most trusted subordinates, is as good as Nazarick, even if it is still a work in progress. Do you understand? Thank you, Ain-sama. Aura bowed in gratitude, and so did the other guardians. There's no need to be so moved, I guess. I feel so embarrassed now. In that case, bring her over, Cocytus. At once, Cocytus immediately brought the white lizard man to the room. She knelt with her head bowed before Ains. What is your name? I am Crush Lu, representative of the lizardmen, O Supreme Overlord of Death, Ainzuel Gaon-sama. Well, that's pretty far-fetched. Ains wondered who had come up with that title, but in the end he decided to adopt the calm, poised attitude of a king. Welcome. Thank you, Gaon-sama. Please accept the utmost loyalty of we, the lizardmen. Ains studied Crush carefully. These scales are beautiful. They glittered under the light of the magical lighting. I wonder how they feel, Ains wondered out of curiosity. Just as Ains lost himself in his thoughts, he realized that Crush's shoulders were trembling. Cocytus should have disabled his cold emanating skills, so it was probably due to some other reason. As he thought on the matter, Ains realized that her shuddering made perfect sense. If Ains said that he was displeased with the lizardmen, every single one of them would be deprived of their heads. Therefore, Crush was hanging on to every word Ains said. Given that she was jumpy and nervous as it was, Ains's unnatural silence would have filled her with terror. Ains was not the sort of person who amused himself by tormenting the weak. He could commit atrocities for the great underground tomb of Nazarick, but his mental state had not degraded to the point where he would perform such acts as part of daily life. The lizardmen shall live under my banner from this day forth. However, Cocytus will be ruling you in my place. I trust there are no problems with that? No. That's it, then. You may return. May I? Crush exclaimed in surprise from where she was bowing. She had thought Ains would demand the moon from her, so this utter betrayal of her expectations brought that reaction forth from her. You may go back for the time being, Crush Lu. The lizardmen will soon enter a period of prosperity. Your future generations will give thanks with all their hearts that they were allowed to swear themselves to me. You are too kind. We are already deeply grateful for the mercy you have shown us despite our opposition to a supreme being like yourself. Ains slowly rose from his throne, and then approached Crush. He knelt down, and put a hand on her shoulder. Surprised, Crush shuddered, and the vibration traveled up Ains's hand. Also, I have a special request for you. May I know what it is? If it is within my power, then I shall strive to fulfill your desires as your faithful servant, Gaon Dono. The idea was not originally mine, but if you agree, I shall restore Zarusu to life in exchange. As he spoke the name he had heard from Cocytus, Crush suddenly raised her head, the very picture of shock. Ains smugly studied Crush's face. She seemed to be trying to hide her feelings, but her expression changed by the moment. Lizard men and humans had very different facial expressions, so Ains could not be certain what was there, but at the very least he could pick out joy, anger, and sorrow. Is that even possible? I possess power over life and death. Death is nothing more than a state of being to me. After hearing Crush's almost imperceptible words, Ains continued. It is like being sick or poisoned, but I cannot extend one's lifespan. Perhaps it would be impossible to do so through conventional means, but it might be possible with wish upon a star. But now is not the time for such things. Then, what do you wish of your loyal slave? My body, perhaps? Ains was dumbfounded. No, that's a bit too. As if. Even if I did desire that sort of thing, it's not as though I'd go so far as to breed with a reptile. Having nearly said that, Ains struggled to maintain his image. He decided to ignore the sound of grinding teeth that came from nearby. Ahem. Of course not. It is simple. I want you to observe the lizard men and see if any of them are going to betray me. No lizard men will betray you. After hearing Crush's firm reply, Ains smiled coldly to her. I am not nearly stupid enough to believe that. Indeed, I am not mighty enough to know what every lizard man thinks, but if they are sufficiently human-like, treachery will be common enough. Therefore, I would like someone to quietly keep an eye on them. Crush resumed her blank expression, which made Ains worry that he had phrased it poorly. While he had wanted to resurrect Zarusu from the beginning, Ains wanted her to ask for it and thus bind her to him with chains of obligation. What should he do if she refused? If I'd known, I shouldn't have been so greedy. Well, I guess there's no point crying over spilt milk. A miracle hangs before you right now, but it will not last forever. If you do not seize the moment, it will be gone forever. Crush's face seemed to be twitching. It is not as though I am going to conduct some horrific ceremony. Does resurrection magic not exist in this world? I am simply going to use a spell like that. That's legendary. As Crush hesitated over whether or not to speak, Ains spoke to her in tender tones, but with an arrogant attitude. Crush, I would like you to think about what is most important to you. Ains watched Crush's eyes as his words slowly got to her. It felt like he was about to clinch a sale. After this, Ains would need to impress upon Crush that the miracle he provided did not come free of charge. After all, people would suspect free things, but their suspicions would be eased if there was a reasonable fee attached to them. I want you to secretly observe your fellow lizard men. Depending on how things turn out, you may be faced with a dangerous choice. In addition, to guard against your treachery, I will cast a certain spell on Zarusu when I resurrect him. It is a spell that will instantly kill Zarusu if I judge that you have betrayed me. It might be hard on you, but it ought to be worth it if you can get Zarusu back. Am I wrong? That said, there's no such spell. Ains stood up, as though to say that he had said his piece, and then he spread his arms. Crush looked at Ains with a tormented expression in her eyes. Ah, yes, when Zarusu is resurrected, I will tell him that he was recalled to life because he was useful to me. I can guarantee that your name will not come up. Well then, Crush Lu, make your choice. This is the last chance you have to return your beloved Zarusu to your side. What will you do? Will you seize this opportunity, or abandon it? Decide. Ains slowly extended a hand to Crush as he looked to the guardians and said, if she refuses, none of you are to do anything. Well then, Crush Lu, what is your answer? End chapter.